This is Bluebook Digital SAT 6, Math Module 1. A certain bird species can fly at an average speed of 16 meters per second when in continuous flight. At this rate, how many meters would this bird fly in 4 seconds? Well, whenever you have a rate, I always recommend writing the actual unit. So meters per second is meters per second. And then that means you understand what to actually put where. So from what's given, it's 16 meters in 1 second, right? That's what meters per second means. Then how many meters would the bird travel in 4 seconds? So this is the unknown, and this goes with seconds, of course, and then you cross multiply to get 64. Line R on the xy plane has a slope of 4 and passes through the point 0, 6. Which equation defines line R? So in slope-intercept form, in y equals mx plus b, you know that you have the point, normally write it as through 0, 6 and slope 4. So m as in Mary is 4 when you have 0 as x and 6 as y. So you could have written it like this, which would let you solve for the fact that b as in boy is 6. Now, of course, you knew that because 0, 6 means that 6 is the y-intercept. So it's 4x plus 6. Which expression is equivalent to that? So I would just do these by doing the distribution and writing them out one at a time. So for example, a as an apple would become 5x to the 5th minus 6x to the 4th, but it doesn't have the last term, so it's not that, okay? Then b as in boy is 5x to the 5th minus 6x to the 4th plus 8x to the 3rd. Yes, that's the answer. The equation x plus y equals 1440 represents the number of minutes of daylight between sunrise and sunset, x, and the number of minutes of non-daylight, y, on a particular day in Oak Park, Illinois. If this day has 670 minutes of daylight, how many minutes of non-daylight does it have? Well, it's just about parsing the question. So x literally is daylight, and y is non, and they add up to 1,440. So if x itself is 670, then you're just hitting that difference. And let me do it on Desmos, right? So 1440 minus 670 is 770. Scott selected 20 employees at random from all 400 employees at a company. He found that 16 of the employees in the sample are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses this year. Based on Scott's findings, which of the following is the best estimate of the number of employees at the company who are enrolled in exactly 3 professional development courses this year? So it's basically this. So it's exactly 3 out of total is exactly 3 out of total, just like setting up a proportion as we did a moment ago. So if the left-hand side here is the sample, that's 16 of them out of 20 that were in the sample. Then on the other side, it's the thing you're looking for out of the 400. And then again, you proceed by cross-multiplying. So 20x is 16 times 400, which is what? A 64 with 2 zeros, which makes x 320. Which equation has the same solution as the given equation? Well, I'm just going to write this out. So now you're looking at, oh, actually, it's designed to be divisible by 7 on both sides. So it's 2x minus 3 is 9, right? Which gives you that x is 6. Oh, but just looking at the first line, the first simplified algebraic step literally is a as an apple. So it's set up so that you can understand it simplifies to that. The given equation relates the positive numbers c, p, and k. Which equation correctly expresses c in terms of p and k? This is just algebraically rearranging. So to solve for c as in cat, you simply add the 7 to both sides. So that stays the same, and then it's just plus 7, right? 25p plus k plus 7. Yeah. A function p estimates that there were 2,000 animals in a population in 1998. Each year from 1998 to 2010, the function estimates that the number of animals in this population increased by 3% of the number of animals in the population the previous year. So increasing by 3% is multiplying by 1.03. I always teach students to think of percentage change as multiplying. Increasing by 3% is multiplying by 1.03. So it seems like it should be C as in cat, but let's finish and read the rest of this. Which equation defines this function where p of x is the estimated number of animals in the population x years after? Yeah, it's multiplying by 1.3 every year. So for example, if you were talking about the year 2002, it would be p of 4 would give you animals in 2002. And it would be where you started in 1998 times 1.03 to the 4th power, where of course the exponent applies just to that. Which expression is equivalent to, this is just about the order of operations and understanding how to do FOIL and expansion. So I'm going to expand the original, would give you x to the 4 plus 11x squared plus 11x squared plus 121. And then the binomial difference times the binomial sum over here would give you x squared plus 5x minus 25. Now I'm going to group these together, right? So x to the 4th plus 22x squared plus 121 plus x squared minus 25. And then keep grouping, right? So x to the 4th plus 23x squared plus, that's 96, right? Yeah. X to the 4th plus 23x squared plus 96. An egg is thrown from a rooftop. That equation represents the situation where h is the height of the egg above the ground in meters, t seconds after it is thrown. According to the equation, what is the height in meters from which the egg was thrown? Well, the height from which it was thrown is the y-intercept of the parabola. And of course, the y-intercept of a parabola, so this is 0, h of 0, right? The y-intercept is the thing you get when you put in 0 as x, or 0 as t, I should say, which is just 18. Of course, you could graph this. Let's do this carefully on Desmos also. Be careful to use x rather than t, because if you use t, it might give you a slider instead of an actual graph. Yeah, and then if you zoom out, you have the point 0, 18. Four times the square root of the quantity 2x equals 16. So divide both sides by 4 gets you to here. Then square the entirety of both sides gets you to here, which gets you to x being 8. So 6x is 48. The relationship between two variables x and y is linear. For every increase in the value of x by 1, the value of y increases by 8. So when you translate from words to math, you can say what that is on a graph. For every increase of x by 1, so that's saying from this blue dot, if you go 1 to the right, you go 8 upward. And of course, that means that your slope triangle, the slope is rise over run, which is 8. So you know that it has a slope of 8. And then when x is 2, the value of y is 18. So you're saying slope 8 and through 2, 18. So when you go to write it in slope-intercept form, it's 18 equals 8 times 2 plus b. So b itself comes out to be 2, which means the general equation of the line is 8x plus 2. How many distinct real solutions does the given equation have? That x squared is negative 841. The answer is none, there's no real number where when you square it, you get a negative. So the answer is none, is 0. But if you wanted to confirm on Desmos, you could probably say, and this would work, but you would have to understand that it shows you nothing, right? Which sort of is more tricky conceptually. So you could write it like this. A more helpful way of drawing it to articulate the fact that there are no solutions is to sketch the quadratic and then separately sketch the line y equals negative 841. And then if you zoom all the way out, well, it's kind of hard to see because of the dimensions. I guess we could change that. Suppose I change this to just from negative 10 to positive 10, so you can see the parabola more clearly, right? So even when you zoom all the way out, it never crosses, right? Because the parabola is in positive territory, and you can never get down here to the horizontal line. The two box plots show the distribution of number of books read over the summer by the students in 2 different English classes. What is the positive difference between the ranges of number of books read over the summer for the 2 classes? You're expected to know by convention how box plots work. So the range for class A is from 0 to 5, which is 5. And the range for class B is from 1 to 10, which is 9, which means the difference and the answer is 4. The length of the edge of the base of a right square prism is 6 units. A right square prism, otherwise known as a box with a square top. So remember, a prism is when you connect 2 of the same polygon into 3-dimensional space. So this is a square and this is a square, and then you attach them to make 3-dimensional volume. This is a box with a square top. So the length of the edge of the base, so this or this, let me use pink actually, this or this or this or this is a 6, okay? The volume of the prism is that. What's the height in units? So they're defining the height as this long dimension here. So it's just 6 times 6 times h equals 2880. So h is the quotient of 2,880 and 36. And it asks about, which is 80. Yep. The scatter plot shows the relationship between 2 variables x and y. An equation for the exponential model shown can be written as y equals a times quantity b to the x power, where a and b are positive constants. Which of the following is closest to the value of b? Interesting. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. Just as is often the case with linear approximation problems, even for the quadratic or exponential approximations, there are a couple of points it looks like it goes through. So I would do this by saying it looks like it goes through 6, 40 and 10, 20. There may be a better way of doing it, but I'm going to do it like this. So 6, 40 and 10, 20 as x and y. So using this, you would say 40 equals a times b to the 6. And then using this, you could say 20 equals a times b to the 10. Then you could solve through the transitive property by solving them both for a as an apple, for example. So for a is 40 over b to the 6th. And then here, a is 20 over b to the 10th. Then by the transitive property, you could set this equal to this. So 40 over b to the 6th equals 20 over b to the 10th. And I'm going to cross multiply here. So 20 times b to the 6th is 40 times b to the 10th. And then divide both sides by 20. So b to the 6th equals 2 b to the 10th. And then divide both sides by b to the 6th, which means you'd actually be left with 1 equals 2b to the 4th. And I'm going to say that you divide both sides by 2 to get to here. So b is now the fourth root of a half, which I'm going to hit on the calculator. Actually, let me hit it on Desmo. So the fourth root of a half, which I'm going to write as quantity 1/2 to the 1/4 power is 0.84. Yeah, which has got to be A as an apple. Now, could you have jumped to simply saying it's A because it's a decreasing exponential function? So it has to be less than 1? Yeah, now that I think about it, you might have jumped, but there's no shame in writing it out, and you can get actually very close to the correct approximation by plugging in a couple of points. What is the value of cos of x degrees? Well, the definition of cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cos of x degrees is adjacent over hypotenuse in a right triangle, which is 11/28. And I think you could just write it as 11/28. What is a positive solution to that given equation? Well, let's list all of the solutions, right? Solutions, otherwise known as roots or x-intercepts or zeros, are the things that make it true that the whole thing comes out to be 0. So this is x being -2, and this is x being +5, and this is x being -9. So the one that's the positive is simply 5. In the figure shown, WZ and XY intersect at point Q. YQ is 63, WQ is 70. So what's most helpful for these questions is to redraw the triangles so that they're oriented in the same direction, so that you can correspond their elements more logically. So I'm going to draw the other one. So the right-hand triangle, I'm going to draw so that it's flipped around and oriented the same way as the left-hand triangle, which I'm showing above. So here's A degrees, and then here's A degrees, which means this guy right here must be Y. And then, of course, Q is there and Q is there, so this must be Z as in zebra. Okay, now the similar triangles are oriented in the same direction. So YQ is 63, WQ is 70, WX is 60, XQ is 120. What is YZ? So it's asking about this right here, which I'm going to use the lowercase letter that's across from the capital letter, which is the standard convention for triangle labeling, and call that lowercase q. Then these are proportional triangles, right? They're similar triangles because this angle is this angle by definition. Those are both q. And then A is A, which means that X must be Z by the rules of supplementarity. So now you can write the proportion as, I'm going to write it as 70 is to 60 as 63 is to Q. And I'm going to write the cross-multiplied form like this. And then the answer would be this. And of course, since this simplifies to 6 parts out of 7, it's 6/7 of 63. And you could have said that 63 over 7 was a 9, which makes the answer 54. The function g is defined by g of x equals quantity x plus 14 times quantity t minus x, where t is a constant, okay? In the xy plane, the graph of y equals g of x passes through the point 24, 0. So this is an example of having the equation of something and having a point through which it goes. So if it passes through 24, 0, then you can literally plug in 24 as x and 0 as the output, and 0 as y, right? 0 as g of x. So it's 0 equals 24 plus 14 times t as in Thomas minus 24. So it's 0 equals 38 times the quantity t minus 24. Well, the 38 doesn't even matter. That could just disappear. The only thing that makes this true is when this itself is 0, which is, of course, just when t itself is 24. Now, that's not the answer to the question. So now the general function can be written as x plus 14 times 24 minus x. This is the general function, and g of 0 is now this times this, which is 14 times 24, which is 336. The number of zebras in the population in 2018 was 1.27 times the number of zebras in this population in 2014. If the number of zebras in this population in 2014 is p% of the number of zebras in the population in 2018, what is the value of p to the nearest whole number? A lot of people would accidentally write this one backwards, but make sure to label what's what. So it's 2014 to 2018 is kind of like start to end. So when you say the 2018 was 1.27 times the starting. So I'm going to say the starting is x, which means when you go from start to end, 2014 to 2018, x to 1.27x. Now, you could still get this wrong because the answer is not 27, and it's also not 73, because that's not how percentage change works, right? If you go up by a certain percent and down by a certain percent, you do not get back to where you started. So now if you wanted to technically say what's this as a percent of this, you'd be looking at x over 1.27x. So the answer is effectively equivalent to what this is as a percent. And this gives you 0.787, which is to say it's 78.7%. The answer is actually 79. That's a tricky question. Circle A not shown is defined by the equation, okay, so circle A not shown, but I am going to actually show it now. So the circle whose equation is this has center -2, 0, and it has radius 3. Center -2, 0, and radius 3 means it looks something like this. Okay, here's -2, 0, and a radius of 3, so this would be 1, 0. And then circle A shown. Oh, I'm sorry. That is circle A shown. That is circle A shown. And then circle B not shown is the result of shifting circle A down 6 units and increasing the radius so that the radius of circle B is 2 times the radius of circle A. So shifting it down 6 units, this goes downward 6 units, gives you -2, -6. And then instead of having radius 3, you now have radius 6. So its equation would be, I'm going to write it the super long way, its equation would be x minus -2 all squared plus y minus -6 all squared equals 6 squared, which is x plus 2 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 36. X plus 2, y plus 6 equals 36. Yeah, which they strangely write. Well, I guess they quadruple it. Yeah, that's kind of a weird way of writing it, but of course it's A as an apple.